Why do we keep going back to quick fixes, even when we know they don't work?
Welcome to the Coaches Hotline. Glucose, grit, and grace. Real talk with coaches, no sugarcoating.
How many times have you blamed yourself when really the diet was set up for you to fail? Carbs were never the enemy. The way we pair them is what makes or breaks blood sugar balance. Let me ask you this. Have you ever crushed a diet only to gain it all back?
We're here to help you ditch the diet cycle, stabilize blood sugar, and finally feel at home in your body.
So many women think cravings mean weakness. Really, it's just your body crying out for balance.
Because health isn't about restriction. It's about freedom, energy, and confidence.
Let's dive in.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Coach Elaine, and today my fellow coaches Amber and Elaine are going to talk to you about what we mean about glucose, grace, and grit. These 3 G's are so important to the 100 Days of 1% program and our success to becoming the healthiest versions of ourselves. So we thought it would be important to start right at the beginning with a quick lesson on glucose and how important glucose is for our metabolic health. Glucose is the measure of what most people call blood sugar in your body, and it's the basic food that our brains need to function. It's also an important element for our health and well-being and our longevity. However, too much of it or too little of it can cause a lot of health problems for our bodies. So, Amber, why don't you start by explaining what happens when we have too much glucose in our blood and how that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's break this down. When we eat carbs and sometimes extra protein, like if we've eaten a little bit too much food, our body breaks that food down into glucose. So, again, as Elaine was saying, glucose is basically the sugar that is in our blood, and it's our main source of energy. So, we totally need it. But here's what happens when we get too much all at once. Your blood sugar spikes, and your body sees that, or like thinks that, oh my gosh, I'm in an emergency. And so your pancreas releases insulin because your body's main job is to protect you. And so the insulin's job is to grab that glucose and shuttle it into your cells for energy. Now, it's going to do that, or it's going to store it in your muscles and liver. Sounds great, right? Because we need it. But there's a problem when we have too much in the storage tanks and they get full, because our cells can only hold so much glucose. All that extra glucose has to go somewhere. And that actually goes right into our fat storage, because leaving too much sugar floating around in your blood is actually toxic. And your body, again, its job is to make sure you stay alive. But here's the kicker. When this happens over and over again, your cells start turning insulin out. It's called insulin resistance. And that's the start of a whole chain reaction where you will start to feel fatigued. You may gain weight, especially around your middle. You're going to have constant cravings and brain fog. And eventually that's going to lead into things like pre-diabetes and then eventually type 2 diabetes if nothing is done about the blood sugar imbalance. So really, in short, too much glucose is like a sugar traffic jam in your bloodstream. Your body works overtime trying to clear it all out to keep you safe. And when it keeps happening, it's not just about weight. It's about your overall health breaking down. And so that's why stabilizing your blood sugar is such a game changer, because when we balance the meals with protein, healthy fats, and smart carbs together, we don't get those roller coaster spikes and crashes. Instead, we get steady energy, better moods, and fewer cravings, and our body can finally function the way it was designed to.
Wow. So Amber, if someone's listening and thinking, I
Mhm.
don't eat that much sugar,
Mhm.
could they still be dealing with blood sugar spikes?
I'm so glad that you asked that because honestly, I had that same thought. I heard blood sugar and I heard, oh, well, that's for diabetics. And I'm
Hmm.
not diabetic, so I don't have to think about it.
Right.
And it's in the same train of thought as sugar. You may not eat a lot of sugar, but every carbohydrate that you put into your body metabolizes as glucose. Um, Regardless of the type of carbohydrate it is, with the exception of fiber. And so even if you're not eating a lot of sugar, if you're eating a lot of grains, rice, breads, even whole grains, it's still turning itself into glucose and you're still spiking your blood sugar if there's an excess. And that's where that balance really comes into play.
Okay.
That's interesting. What are some of the first signs that your blood sugar might not be stable?
Yeah, I would say probably the most prevalent, probably the two first things that most people notice are energy crashes, especially in the afternoon. When it's like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you've had lunch, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I need a Coke or a coffee or a nap." And I think we frown at that at most workplaces, and so you are left with, "I'm not sure what to do right now." So it's going to be energy crashes and also brain fog. People equate brain fog to a whole bunch of different reasons, but I would say the number one reason and the first thing to check off the list for blood sugar or for brain fog is my blood sugar out of balance. Those are the first two things people are going to notice right away.
Awesome. So what if I'm craving carbs all the time? I know well, I used to, but does that mean that our blood sugar is already out of whack?
You know what? I'm so glad that you mentioned that. It does. Our body craves things when it's missing essential nutrients. So just because your body is craving chips doesn't mean it needs nutritionally for you to have a bag of chips. But what it is saying is, hey, I'm out of whack. I feel like my blood sugar is crashing. And the fastest way your body knows to get blood sugar to raise is through carbs. And it's whatever our favorite go-to carb is.
Yep.
But that actually moves us into the next part of blood sugar balance, which is what happens when the opposite is going on and it's crashing. And Elaine, will you help us with that a little bit?
I can.
Awesome.
So Amber just did a great job of explaining blood sugar spikes. It's that big rush after you eat something that's sweet or carb heavy. Um, but at the other side of the coin is what happens when our blood sugar drops. These drops can sneak up on us really quickly. They can leave us. So if you've ever felt shaky or you felt foggy or ready to bite someone's head off for no reason, they call it hangry maybe. Um, and honestly, most of us don't even realize that we have these low points and how much they affect our energy and our mood, even our decision making. So I'm going to walk you through what actually happens when your blood sugar levels drop. So what happens, just like I said earlier, you get shaky, you get foggy, you're ready, you're just mad, and you don't know why. So I know I can remember times when my blood sugar would drop. I might be at a store or something, and all of a sudden I would just feel just really shaky. It's like I've got to get something to eat. That was a sign to me, which I know now, is that my blood sugar was dropping. So that's one of the things we want to look out for.
Absolutely. And so, can you tell us what are some of the most common reasons that people might experience these crashes?
Well, the biggest culprit is
Mhm.
when we skip meals
Mm,
or we waited too long in between eating. How many of us have thought, hey, I'm going to dinner tonight, so I'm not going to eat anything all day? Your blood sugar is going to drop. Another reason is if we eat some really big carb heavy snacks, like a bagel or a muffin without protein or fat. Remember, we want to keep things balanced. So you're going to get a quick spike of that carb heavy snack, and then your blood sugar is going to plummet. So caffeine, too much caffeine can also do that to us. And let's not forget that if you over exercise without having the proper fuel, you're going to tank your energy really fast.
Yeah, that's true. So what's the practical takeaway then? How can we prevent these drops from happening?
Well, what we want to do is we want to eat PFC, protein, fats, and carbs together every 3 hours. So think of it like a campfire. Your carbs are the kindling, your protein and fat are the logs. If you just throw in kindling, you're going to flare up and you're going to burn out. So kindling is usually small. It's what starts our fire. But when you balance them together, you get a steady, controlled fire that lasts. That's what keeps our blood sugar steady all day. So again, you need everything together in order to keep a lasting, steady day.
And I think that's where the information out there gets confusing, because people will hear, well, I don't want glycation in my body. I don't want my blood sugar to spike. So I'm just not going to eat carbs. But the reality is our brains need carbs.
Yes.
And when our body isn't getting what it needs from our food, it's going to grab it from our bodies, and sadly not from our fat, right? It's going to grab it from our muscles first, because that's the easiest way to metabolize that kind of glucose that our bodies need. Our brains live on glucose. So it's really not a good long-term strategy to not eat carbs. What our body is working for is that homeostasis. You kind of see that chart in the middle, that balance of having between 80 and 120 milligrams per deciliter. Now, what happens when you have that homeostasis is your body doesn't have to work so hard to keep you alive. And both of you guys mentioned that, it's like your body has to work very hard when you're glycating and when you're crashing, when you're spiking and when you're crashing. So your body desires that homeostasis. It desires the balance. And and that's what it will work hard to achieve. So when you're doing the eating the way to create that homeostasis balance, which is eating your proteins, fats, and carbs every 3 hours, that tells your body, hey, I'm going to give you exactly what you need. Right. And I love that fire analogy, that the proteins and the fats are like logs. They keep everything burning for longer. And then your glucose then can feed your brain. It doesn't get overloaded in your blood, and you're giving your body exactly what you need. You are creating that homeostasis. And this is what I tell everybody. When you are giving your body homeostasis, it doesn't have to work so hard to keep you alive. It doesn't have to draw from your muscles to get the food it needs to live. So it can start doing the things it needs to do to keep you healthy. And this is what people mean by metabolic balance, right? So when your body is healthy, when your metabolism is healthy, your body can start getting rid of extra fat, because it's like, hey, I don't need this because I'm getting what I need. And it can start also fixing the other things that we call aging. So your hormone imbalance and like if you have autoimmune disease, it can help you start managing your autoimmune symptoms. It can help your skin. It can start helping your hair and your nails grow better. And everything works better when you keep your blood sugar in homeostasis.
So how long, if someone has had a lot of ups and downs, how long do you think it takes to reach homeostasis?
I think it's different for everyone. I think it depends on how long you have been doing spikes and crashes. And some people can balance their blood sugar very quickly. Other people, my experience was it took about 4 months of eating this way for my blood sugar to start balancing out. And then it took another couple of months for it to stay there. So I don't know what your guys' experience was.
It took a while for it to kick in. I think for me, it was even longer than 4 months because I had spent so many years dieting
Mhm.
that I had really broken my system and my trust with my body. So,
Yeah, I think for me, I think it was about the same as you, Elaine, but I did have a little bit longer period of kind of keeping it within that homeostasis. And like you said, Amber, I think everybody's different depending on what
mhm,
they put their bodies through, and we have to allow our bodies to heal. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
So, Elaine, how would let's say that somebody is like, let me try this, see if it works. How are they going to know if what they're doing is working?
That's actually a really good question because when you can listen to your body, then you know what your body needs, right? And
Hmm.
so if you are feeding your body for homeostasis and balance with your blood sugar, I think the first thing you're going to notice is more energy. You're not going to have that afternoon slump. Your sleep is going to be better. You're going to have less fatigue, less inflammation. You're going to notice your body just feels better. I know one of the first things I noticed, one was more energy. I no longer had the patience with myself to like sit and scroll on my phone for hours because I'm like, this is boring, man. I want to go do something. And then I started noticing I was waking up before my alarm and I was sleeping really well. And as somebody with Hashimoto's, we like our sleep and we generally wake up very tired, whether we've slept or not. And so when I started waking up before my alarm, I was a little bit mad because I thought, I'm not getting the sleep I need. But it turns out I was because my
That's
body was healthy.
awesome. Yeah, that's great.
That is. That's
The
wonderful.
other good thing is I think you'll start noticing that every 3 hours you'll kind of get a hunger cue.
Hmm.
And that's something, that we're trained to push through. We're
Hmm.
told by the dieting industry, hunger is bad. And so you have to push through your hunger. But when you start getting those hunger cues and you're like, oh, I'm a little hungry. Oh, look, it's been about 3 hours since I ate. It's time to
Yeah.
eat.
Hmm.
Isn't that exciting?
It is. It is. It was kind of cool.
It's like I can feed that hunger cue because I've been trained for so long not to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
all right.
starting this opened up a whole new world of actually being able to eat,
Yes.
Right.
and not worrying about it because I knew what I was eating was exactly what my body needed.
It's that food freedom.
It
Hmm.
is truly,
So
Yeah.
truly.
much freedom. Yeah.
That's exciting. And I think that's the basis of why we teach what we teach is because this has been so life-changing for us.
Right.
100%.
So, but
That's
it's not just about blood sugar, right? It's also
Hmm.
about how we are showing up for ourselves and how we're acting. So, Amber, maybe
Yeah.
the other word in our logo, we have glucose, we have grit, and we have
Uh-huh.
grace.
Yeah.
Explain to us a little bit what you mean by grit. What do we mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I got to tell you, anybody can hand you a meal plan.
yep.
And believe you me, on the 40 years of dieting, I have gotten a bazillion meal plans. Um, but what really is I think the component that changes everything is where that grit comes in. Because what do you do when you're tired of the routine or you're tired of the food? I know that sometimes I can get into a rut and I'll eat the same PFC3 meals, for like 2 weeks, and then I get bored.
Mhm.
Um, Also, seasons of our life gets super busy. Um, and that's for me has always been being bored or being too busy is when all my systems go out. And which does beg the question, was it truly a system or was it just something I told myself I had to do? And so that's where grit comes in is yes, we are tired of the same 5 or 6 meals that you've been eating for 2 weeks. Does that mean we give up and we stop showing up for ourselves? No, of course not. What can I do? Well, I go back to the grab and go guide and I go, okay, I don't want to have that anymore, but here's 2 new things I would like to try, 2 or 3 new things I would like to try. There's so many recipes that we're going to be supplying you guys with over time. And so you really can shake it up. But if you're not used to it, because diets have told you you got to eat this and this is the only thing you can eat, you're just not used to it. But grit comes into place when we say, "Hey, girl, we're not talking to you about forcing yourself to white knuckle through it another diet."
Right.
And I was so used to that. But we mean the kind of grit that's really about resilience and showing up for yourself when it's not shiny and it's not exciting. Because let's be real, there will always be days when you are bored with food, when life is crazy busy, or when you're just tired of the routine. That's totally normal. But
Right.
grit is what keeps you grounded in your why. So instead of saying, "Oh, I just don't feel like it today," grit is where you say, "Okay, so it's not perfect right now, but I can still make the next best choice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Am I busy today? Sure. But do I know 5 different grab and goes that I can have so that I can eat all day and not have to worry about stopping by fast food?" Absolutely. So for me, grit looks like having the discipline to think ahead.
Mhm.
And if it's a busy day, make it simple.
Right.
And when I don't want to do it or it sounds too heavy, if I just take a 5-minute walk instead of doing a full workout, it's that consistency. But what
Ah,
it isn't is
Yes.
ever perfection.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And
Mhm,
that's what I love about this lifestyle is that we're
mhm,
not on or off. We're just trying to do better each day.
Right.
And
You
I
you
love
know,
some of the words you said about showing up for yourself and being intentional and just remembering why you want to do this. It's so easy sometimes to give up on ourselves. And I think we'll be talking more in this podcast about ways that we cannot give up on ourselves, learning some of the mindset tricks that we learn in the 100 Days of 1%.
yeah.
Not necessarily tricks, just the mindset strategies.
mhm.
Or I don't know, can I be trendy and call them life hacks?
Hey, there you go. I think
Yeah,
we should.
right, right. So we'll be talking about that a lot more. But yeah, you're right. Grit is just deciding that this is good for you and you want to live as the healthiest version of yourself. And so sometimes you just have to do it whether you're feeling like it or not,
Mhm.
Right.
because
Right.
you know that it's a good thing for you.
Absolutely. And then we can talk about grace and we can
Mhm.
figure, we can talk about, what is grace in all of this? So grace is, and it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's the opposite of grit, but grace is basically forgiving ourselves when maybe things don't go the way we had thought we had planned it to go. How many times have you made a plan and does it always go according to plan? So when we slip up, we forgive ourselves. We're not going to beat ourselves up. We're going to say, "Hey, it was okay." We're going to look at it and say, "Now I know what I'm going to do differently." Or this is how I'm going to handle it differently. So again, forgive ourselves. Let's look at it, think about what we might do differently, and we let it go. We don't dwell on it. The other thing about grace is about being flexible. You know, like we said earlier, life happens. How many times does a plan go 100% according to plan? When we travel, flights are delayed. Amber, you know that.
Yes.
We're delayed, we're not getting our luggage, things like that. With me, with the grandkids and stuff. Sometimes I have to go pick them up at a moment's notice because their parents aren't able to, or taking them to baseball practice or a game. I didn't plan that into my day. My kids didn't plan it into their day either, but I'm here to help them. So I'm flexible. Many of you with work stress, I know how much work stress there can be. So we need to give ourselves grace to adjust without throwing everything out the window. We also, with grace, want to look at and honor that bigger picture. So again, we've said it before and we're going to say it many times. Progress is not about perfection.
Right.
It's about being consistent, and it's the kindness towards ourselves while we grow. Again, perfection is boring, all right? According to plan, how life would be boring, right? I know sometimes we'd like a little bit more boring, but we have to look at it. Things are not going to be perfect all the time. The other thing is that grace is what softens the grit.
Oh,
So
I love that.
I'm sorry.
I just said I love that.
Yeah. Grit pushes us forward, but grace keeps us from burning out. So think about that. When Amber talked about, a meal, we're bored with our meals, but yet we know what's going to get us through. So maybe for today, we're going to go ahead and have deli turkey for the 5th time this week. But grace keeps us from burning out, because what we're going to say is, okay, I know I'm bored with this, so I'm going to take the time, whether it be in my weekly planning, my daily planning, to maybe find something else to replace that deli turkey. So if we have too much grit and not enough grace, you might end up with a very rigid, perfectionistic, and you're going to be exhausted because you're trying to keep things perfect, and life just isn't perfect.
True. Yeah.
And that's one thing I used to tell my teams when I worked in the corporate world. We may have been perfect in this moment, but there's going to be some outside force that's going to make us imperfect again. So trying to strive, for perfection is exhausting, because you're only going to hit it for a little bit. If we lived in our own little bubble, then that might work, but we don't. There are so many outside forces. So we don't want to fall in that all or nothing trap. That's the diet trap. And we want to get out of that diet trap. If we have too much grace and not enough grit, well, we're giving ourselves permission, and we're probably we're letting ourselves off the hook too often. And then we lose momentum. So that's when your goals get sidelined. Maybe your why isn't as strong. Maybe you need to look at your why. Because while we want to have grit and grace, we want to make sure that we're balanced both of those.
I love that. You guys did such a great job explaining all of that and why we named our podcast Glucose, Grit, and Grace.
I love the name.
I do too. And all those things together, I think, balance out so nicely to give you a lifestyle instead of a diet plan. So just to spend a few minutes reviewing, we talked about glucose and the power of our blood sugar, and how more than anything, we want to give our body the homeostasis that it's asking for, that it needs to thrive, so that we don't spike and crash. And we do that by eating proteins, fats, and carbs every 3 hours. And as we go on, we'll explain this stuff more. Again, we kind of live in a 1% mentality, where we're going to give you a little bit to chew on and think about, and then come back and we'll get more and we'll get deeper as we go on. But that's the first thing, the power of blood sugar and glucose regulation, and feeding your body so that it has homeostasis. And then in order to make this work, we need to have some grit and we need to have some grace. We can't have too much of each, but the grit keeps us showing up for ourselves, and the grace helps us forgive ourselves when we're not perfect, so that we can just learn to be a little bit better. Would you guys agree that's a good summary? Anything you want to add?
I would. I think that's great.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
And people shouldn't be frustrated or because they're not learning all of this at once. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 2 years now, and I'm still learning every day. So, one thing I learned this week is that watermelon spikes me.
Yeah, me too.
You would think it's all water, but it is, it has sugar in it. So I just have to make sure that I'm pairing it with the right protein, so that I can stay within my homeostasis balance.
And watch your portion sizes.
Exactly. Yeah, because
we'll be
Well,
getting
go on.
into all of that pretty soon.
Yeah.
But the best place to start is just understanding why blood glucose is so important to managing your health. So that's where we wanted to start today.
Yep.
So that's all we have. I wanted to encourage you guys to make some comments down below. You guys can click the links and go to our website. And if you want to talk to any of us individually, you can do that too. But as every podcaster says, please like and follow because we want to get this word out to everyone. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you again real soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.